Hi, this is Bill Meridian speaking to you again from Vienna, Austria on March 17th, 2015. This is the fifth in a series of presentations about eclipses and their paths. Right now we are going to look at the lunar eclipses of 2014-15. That is the one that took place in the spring, and the one coming up in the autumn, and the one coming up in the spring on April 4th, 2015, about 2 weeks from now. Now this material, like much of the other material, has been drawn from my writings in Dell Horoscope magazine in the Planets in You column. This situation began with the lunar eclipse on October 8, 2014 at 15 Aries 05. The next lunar eclipse occurs on April 4th, 2015 at 14 Libra 24. Now notice this is one of the eclipse principles. One eclipse roughly opposes the other, in this case by about half a degree. So whatever begins at the first eclipse is re-energized at the second eclipse. And as usual, we look back to simply see what happened the last time. The last set of lunar eclipses in these degrees occurred on October 8th, 1995 at 14 Aries 53, and on April 4th, 1996, 14 Libra 30. And here we see the two recent eclipses, October 8th past and April 4th coming. And we can see from the wheels how the one eclipse overlaps the other. Now we look back to the effect of the last set of eclipses, and if you haven't guessed by now, the last set of lunar eclipses at these degrees corresponded with the O.J. Simpson affair, and we've all heard enough about that, so I'll skip right on to the next subject. These eclipses hit the USA Saturn 14 Libra and Sun 13 Cancer, so it tested the USA legal system. And if you pull out your 90-degree dial and put the pointer on the eclipse, you'll note it hit Node and Mars-Neptune. Now Mars-Neptune accounting for the mystery, the deception, the intrigue, and so on and so forth. And I'll also add that 13 to 14 of Cancer Capricorn is, according to Charles Jane, and you can look this up in Devore's Encyclopedia of Astrology, the invariable plane, the plane at which all planetary velocities net out to zero, discovered by the Frenchman Laplace. It is quite remarkable because it doesn't change. With everything whirling around in space, this plane stays stable. And over the years, I've come to realize it has to do with a state of balance, or of having things in equilibrium. And so the U.S. Sun-Saturn square being in that axis, I've always felt, accounts for the USA acting as the world's policeman. And therefore, any hits to this degree, or any planets located at this degree, pick up extra energy due to this fixed plane out in space. Now, these eclipses hit the USA, and there we see the Saturn at 14 Libra. I'm sure you're familiar with this. No matter what time of the day you use, the Sun-Saturn square is still there. Now, here is a short-term event trigger. This is set for March 12, 2015 in the outer wheel at 0:10 a.m. for Ferguson, Missouri. Now, obviously, I'm drawing a parallel between the O.J. Simpson affair and the current Ferguson, Missouri shootings. So when the first one occurred, I had written in Dell Horoscope, I had drawn the parallel between O.J. Simpson and this current period and said expect something that tests race relationships in the U.S. justice system again. So the minute the first shooting occurred of Michael Brown back in the summer, you instantly look to this eclipse and to the next eclipse, and knowing that there is a second eclipse opposing the first one, you know that that affair is not going to simply end with the shooting of one unfortunate young black man in the summer. There's more to the story, just like there was more to O.J. Simpson. And in between those periods, you can use transits to time the exact events that constitute the overall theme. Now right here, if you look at the outer wheel and just locate Mars and Uranus at 16 Aries, and now look at the upcoming eclipse at about 15 Aries. Do you see how Mars conjunct Uranus in space hit the eclipse point and set it off, and led to the shooting of the two policemen slightly past midnight, March 12, 2015. So that's how a short-term trigger works. You can also use the sun. If the transiting node backs over that degree, which it doesn't always because it's moving retrograde and it may simply be past that degree when the eclipse occurs and may not come back to that degree, those are all very good triggers, but outer planets, of course, rarely hit eclipses when they're still hot. Now, one additional note. In the USA National Horoscope, the Uranian planet Hades is at 0 Scorpio 47, and the solar eclipse on October 23, 2014 fell on that degree. Now, Hans Nigemann from the Hamburg School of Astrology taught that Hades rules the dark-skinned races. And I can make this very clear to you by just taking the horoscope of any rock and roll star, Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, put the pointer on Hades in the chart, and you'll see it lights up like a Christmas tree. Where does white American rock and roll trace its roots back to but to black rhythm and blues? In fact, rock and roll is a phrase borrowed from them. That is where it comes from. And what is the music about? Largely, oh Lord, we have the blues, why do we suffer so much? So that's the easiest way to see the connection. So a solar eclipse on that degree would have added the additional clue that something would occur involving race relations in the United States. And if we put the pointer on Hades, what do we wind up with but the same Mars-Neptune midpoint again, but we get Mars-Neptune on one side and Uranus on the other. So a repetition of Mars-Neptune, which was picked up as we saw previously. And let me add that Hades in a horoscope rules a lot of different things, and it can be deep, dark secrets from the past. So this is when we had revelations about spying and dirty dealings in the security services in the United States. If you go to the horoscope of Argentina, you'll see that their Hades is very active regarding the death of the opponent of the Argentine president, which I'm not going to go into right now. But Hades rules the lower side of the nature, things that we might have done that we did out of negative motives and are quite ashamed of, and the eclipse brings it to the surface. So let's review the eclipse principles relied upon to do this analysis. Number one, we look back at the prior set of eclipses for a clue as to what might recur now. Two, once the first event occurs and is known, look to the second eclipse, which will oppose the first. The second eclipse will re-energize the eclipse and bring all those matters and affairs to attention again. Lunar eclipses typically begin to have an effect about 6 weeks prior to their occurrence. Number four, the lunar eclipses opposite each other represent some theme that will become active and remain active. And five, transits of other planets can be used as timers as to the specific events that comprise the theme. Now, as an extra added bonus, no extra charge, here is the effect on the S&P, the Standard & Poor's 500, of the last eclipse, October 2014. That was the one that occurred back this prior autumn. Notice the decline in the S&P. Now let's jump back to 1996 April and note that eclipse occurred right on the day of the beginning of the decline. That's April 1996. Now let's jump back to the previous autumn, October 1995. Lunar eclipses conjunct the invariable plane, plus or minus a couple degrees, have a bearish effect, as you can see. We've got 3 out of 3, and you can mark on your calendar April 4th coming up, just so you have something to look forward to. These presentations are never fun unless the wise guy doing them sticks his neck out and makes a prediction. That way you can laugh if it's wrong, and if it's right, you'll be all impressed. So, last but not least, you can buy Predictive Power of Eclipse Paths at BillMeridian.com. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you've picked up a bit more knowledge about eclipse path analysis. Bye-bye.